The Rottnest Channel swim is often talked about as a single day, but for most swimmers, it's the result of months or even years of preparation, uncertainty, and learning. In this episode, I'm joined by Tyson Landers, who is preparing for his first solo crossing of Rottnest Channel. Tyson comes from an endurance background, has taken on long swims like the Lake Argyle 20-kilometre duo, and experienced the unique frustration of having the 2024 Rotto swim cancelled when he was halfway across the channel. We talk about why he was drawn to the challenge and how he fits training around study, work and life, what he learned from the previous year's cancellation and how he's approaching the swim this year. This conversation is about preparation, resilience, and what it really means to commit to an open water challenge. I'm Grant Landers, and this is the science and art of open water swimming. Welcome to the science and art of open water swimming. I'm Grant Landers, an endurance swimming coach and sports scientist. And in this podcast, we explore open water swimming through the lens of lived experience, coaching practice, and evidence-based science. Each episode brings together swimmer stories, practical insights, and research-informed perspectives to help you better understand performance, preparation, and decision-making in open water environments. So, hi Tyson, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd really just like to first get a bit of an idea of who you are, so our audience, our listeners can get an appreciation for you. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do for work? Are you studying? What does life look like outside of training?
Well, I currently study at UWA and I'm studying an engineering and finance degree. So I'm in my second semester, coming into my second semester now. I first took on physiotherapy, but changed midway through, and I'm enjoying my time at UWA studying engineering at the moment. And I also work at UWA in a swimming teaching capacity, and I teach kids and adults for squads and for swimming lessons.
Well, that's really interesting. So with your swimming teaching, what are some of the challenges you're facing there with those first-time swimmers?
Well, with the adults, it's very difficult because some of them, they've never been in a pool or never been in the ocean or anything, and it can be very difficult for them to, first of all, float, and then also just feeling their way through the water, like sinking or, diving into the water. It can be more difficult than some of the kids who naturally find it very enjoyable in the water, whereas the adults, they turn up and they want to learn, unlike some of the kids, but they're very rigid in some of the ways that they think about the water, and sometimes when they're learning, they listen, but they also take everything very literally. So if I say, use straight legs or something, they'll lock their knees together rather than, relaxing in the water. So it's difficult for some, but I found a lot of success in the last few months teaching some of the adults, and they've really improved. So I really enjoy teaching. And for the kids, they try to have a bit of fun, but also at the same time, we want to get them passing levels as quickly as possible. So it's really satisfying, but it's also a lot of hard work for some of them to get them up.
Cool. I think it's really interesting how you identified the challenges and potentially some of the fears that some of these adult swimmers have learning to swim. It's also, I like that you've identified that they typically do it by choice as opposed to the kids, where they don't necessarily have as much of an option to learn to swim. However, I guess that sort of leads me into that question as to sort of how did swimming first become part of your life?
Well, I guess swimming's always been a part of my life. Uh, I grew up in and around the pool, at the beach, having you as a dad, I've been around UWA for a long time at the pool, in lessons, and then in squads, and then at the EnduroFit squad for about 8 years now, so a long time. And it's always been part of my week, whether it's been in the afternoons doing swimming lessons and then later squads as a kid, or in the mornings during school time, and then now during university and the rest of my life, swimming in the mornings and longer swims on the weekends now.
So you've been involved with swimming basically since you came out of that womb.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested now if we sort of start to sort of move on to Rottnest. So when did this idea of swimming solo to Rottnest first enter your mind?
I guess the Rottnest swim's always been in the background, living here in Perth, but ever since I think you did a team race maybe 10 years ago, and ever since that point, it's been, well, in the back of my head. But I guess you also did a lot of Rottnest marathons, and so traveling to Rottnest has always been something we've done, and we've been over there a lot. And I guess the thought of it's always been there for some part of me. But since you've done the solo and I took on the duo at Lake Argyle, I guess I've thought much deeper about it and really strive to achieve it someday.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's an iconic place within Western Australia. A lot of people travel there for holidays, and there are a number of events that are hosted over there. Obviously, as you mentioned, the Rotto Swim itself. There's the Rotto Marathon, and previously they used to have the state long course triathlon champs over there. Since moved down to Busselton. So for a lot of West Australians, it is certainly an event that they look towards and trying to achieve. Now, you mentioned Lake Argyle. So in 2022, you made the trip up to Kununurra and in a duo completed the 20K. So when you think back on that swim, what are some of the things that stand out? What was exciting about it? What did you enjoy?
Well, one of the most exciting things was the place. Kununurra was amazing, and Lake Argyle is one of my favorite places in WA. And so being up there itself was an awesome experience. Then I guess having all the team up there, Uncle Jeremy and Mum and Lucas all pitching in to help, and they all contributed on the day. And it was really awesome having them all there to watch me and you there swimming next to me. It was, I'd say, the first time I'd really put my thoughts and my training to use to try and achieve something. Before that, I don't think I've ever worked towards a goal that big. So it was my first big swim, my first big goal as a swimmer. And so it was really a first step towards Rottnest, I think.
Yeah, excellent. And obviously, you were the first person out of the duo. You actually started the event. How did you feel at that point? How did you feel on, because it's a 20K boat ride to the start. It's not just off the beach like it is at Cottesloe. You have to travel the 20Ks to the middle of the lake and then swim back. What were the things going through your mind in the lead up in that last sort of hour and then getting in the water and the start itself?
Well, I think at first it was trying to hold on to the boat because I'm pretty sure we were running a bit late on that day, and we steamed out on the boat and there was water pushing up into our faces. Me and Lucas were sitting at the front of the boat where there's no protection, no glass protection. So we were getting soaked from the water and we were bumping up and down on the water. So at first it looked like it was going to be a rough day, but when I got in the water and it was all still, it was not too cold like Rottnest has been. I got in there and I thought, yep, I'm ready to swim. And I think I swam out pretty fast. on that day. It was faster than I think we'd planned for, but getting in the water, it was good. There was a lot of people around there who were doing it for their first time, and it was really exciting, especially after the night before, which we'd had a sort of race briefing or get together, I think, the night before with all the people that were swimming, and it was really exciting leading up to the race.
It is a very much a country event, a very much a social event. We weren't necessarily running late out to the start, but the wind was in our face, and with that, that wind will create that surface chop, and it's one of the topics that we will cover in later episodes related to waves and how that impacts swimming. So for us in the event itself, we typically had the wind behind us and the waves behind us. You also mentioned the water temperature being a little bit warmer than what it is in Perth. How did that water temperature and plus the freshwater nature of the swim, did you notice any differences in terms of the way that you felt in the water as you were swimming along?
I guess the water temperature itself was really nice. The only thing was we were swimming in a duo, so we were getting out every now and then. So I guess the colder part was getting in and out rather than actually swimming. I reckon the temperature was much nicer than Rottnest, and the fresh water part, I think I definitely do notice that now that I've done a lot of ocean swimming. I feel like I'm a lot more buoyant. I don't reckon I struggled with the fresh water, but it was definitely a different sort of swim in the way that I currently do swim in the ocean rather than in the fresh water.
Yeah, so and that's really important component is the density of water is different between salt water and fresh water, and therefore your buoyancy, you're more buoyant in salt water. One of the other things I think you've spoken to me previously is around chafing and the differences between those two water environments. What have you noticed when you talk about swimming in freshwater versus saltwater?
Well, to be completely honest, I haven't done that much freshwater swimming. And I believe when I did do the Lake Argo swim, I was a fair bit smaller than I am right now. So I don't reckon I had quite as much chafing, but I do think that I experience a lot more chafing in the salt water than I do in the freshwater. And that's the same in the pool. Don't chafe as much unless I'm doing a really long swim or I've shaved the night before. It's really more apparent in the salt water, and that might be something to do with the salt or might be something to do with the length of my swims, but you probably know more about that than me.
Yeah, so obviously with the particles within the water can have an impact on how things rub together, which then potentially leads us to thinking about how we might protect the body in those saltier conditions to obviously reduce the amount of chafing. So using different types of lubricant will also assist with protecting the skin. So if we move on from Lake Argyle, because that obviously had a big impact on you as a swimmer and giving you confidence to then progress through into taking on this larger challenge with Rottnest. If we think about the preparation now for Rotto at the moment, can you sort of talk us through what a typical training week looks like? We don't necessarily need numbers, but just sort of what's included, what do you do in terms of preparation from a physical point of view? And then how do you sort of fit that around your work and your study commitments?
Well, my work commitments are usually in the afternoon at the moment. So trying to get my swims in the morning is important. Same goes with strength training and any sort of other training I might do or exercise. With uni at the moment, it's very much uh, low contact hours at the moment with the course I'm doing. It'll probably increase very much in the next year or two, but working and uni don't really interfere with my training because I'm training most mornings on 3 mornings on the week and trying to fit a larger swim in on the weekend, then moving around with my strength training in the gym twice a week or more, and trying to get, as you say, 60 hours of high intensity activity a day or close to that if possible.
So getting through at least an hour of exercise a day, that's great. You mentioned a couple of sessions of strength training a week. How much of an impact do you think that has on your swimming performance?
I certainly think it has a big impact. I specifically remember before my first Rottnest swim, my first attempt, I was training twice, 3 times a week for a whole year leading up to that event. And I remember feeling strong. I was swimming really fast, in the pool. I'm swimming PBs every few weeks for 400s and 1Ks. And since then, I've been in the gym quite a bit less, a lot of less strength training. And I've certainly noticed that with my swimming. It's a good part of my last year has been consistent with my swimming, though. So I haven't fallen away as much as I thought I would. I've certainly been swimming 3 times, 2 times a week for the last year since my last Rottnest swim, and which is probably more consistent than I was leading up to the last one. But the strength hasn't been there as much, my strength training. So it's certainly shown a difference in my, not necessarily my fatigue, but my overall strength and my personal bests and season best times.
Okay. So just you mentioned that your swimming training has probably been a little bit less. What sort of things have impacted that? Why has that been a little bit less in the last sort of 12 to 18 months? What went on in your life that you sort of you were challenged by?
Yeah, well, I had ATAR exams not last year, the year before. So I did those exams, and that really impacted my preparation for last year's swim, which I ended up not competing in. I had some sickness, which has been luckily fixed the last year. I haven't been so unwell consistently, but it's been a combination of school and uni. I've had uni exams, which a lot of people have, and I shouldn't use that as an excuse, but I have had a lot, and I've changed unis, and I guess there's just normal life stuff that's been going on that's impacted my consistency and extended breaks for training and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So I really like how you've been very open about those challenges. And even though, as you acknowledge, most people have these challenges, and it might be work, it might be study, it might be family illnesses, etc. But each of these things is a stress on the body. And we do need to acknowledge that these are stresses, just like training is a stress. And to try and get that balance right is really important. Unless you're a professional athlete who doesn't have to work and doesn't have to study, we have to try and get the right balance with those things. So I think it's really important that you acknowledge, as you have, acknowledge the challenges that you faced, acknowledge that your year 12 study was a priority, which therefore you had to reduce your training volume. And if we didn't balance that right, then potentially your level of illness starts to increase as well. So, as I said, I think it's really important that you do acknowledge that. And when we're planning training, that trying to find the sweet spot between the amount of volume of training you can do and fitting that around life is very important. So moving on to probably a bit more of the emotion attached to Roto Swim. You mentioned that 2 years ago, the event was cancelled when you were halfway across. And then last year, you thought you'd have another crack, but because of year 12, you couldn't train appropriately. So you decided to withdraw before the start. And now we're having another go sort of 24 months on. I'm hoping you could sort of go back to, let's say, 9 a.m. thereabouts in February of 2024, when we told you from the boat that you need to get in the boat, that the swim has been cancelled, it's all over. How did you feel? What was going through your head at that point in time?
I was pretty devastated. I mean, it was what I'd been working for the last 6 months, and I knew that I could achieve it after my success in 10K swims that season. Uh, because I really improved a lot in the ocean in my long distance swims in that time. I remember I'd dropped about 30 minutes on my 10K time, and I was really looking forward to the swim and getting there that morning, and it was raining and there was a lot of chop and it was cold and everyone was, standing around and not looking too impressed. It was daunting, but I was really excited that I was going to be able to get there. And when I got pulled up in the boat, I was really disappointed because after I found out I was 10Ks to the way through and I felt like I'd been swimming forever with the way things were going, I knew that I was going to get there, but I knew that if the conditions were going to be this bad, I was going to have to slow down. And I ended up slowing down for the last K or so because it was just so tough getting through those conditions. But when I got pulled out into the boat, it was terrible, and I was pretty disappointed and kind of upset and angry at myself for the all the way to Rottnest, and then we got there and everyone else was feeling the same thing. So
Yeah. I think that again, this is where open water swimming, there's so much uncertainty. It's not controlled like swimming in the pool. You don't know, well, you can't control the conditions that you're going to have. You can prepare physically, and ideally, you want to prepare for the worst possible conditions. Obviously, on this day, the conditions were beyond what was deemed as safe, and therefore the event was cancelled. So, from that experience, how you might have changed your preparation leading into this event this coming year, what have you taken away from that experience?
well, I think I took away a lot, especially the just in general ocean swimming, because before that point I hadn't really done much ocean swimming myself. It had been, leading up to Lake Argyle, it had been mostly in the pool and not much, if any, in the ocean. So ocean swimming to me was new, and coming into this year, I've been able to prepare myself a lot better, I think, for 10K swims and ocean swims because I know what to expect. Going back to the first Rottnest swim that I did, the months leading up to that, I didn't have any sort of background with the chafing aspect or the chop aspect and the all the preparation needed before the race day to get myself ready with feeding. I didn't have any experience with really feeding because Lake Argyle had been feeding on the boat rather than in the ocean. So all these things I learned that year, and I've been able to apply this year to my ocean swimming, which has been really important to me, and it's saved me a lot of time, and I think it's really improved my swim in the long run.
Yeah, well, you swam the Christmas Cracker 10K just before Christmas, and the conditions then were not ideal, but certainly not as challenging as what you had for Rotto 2 years ago. But again, from a feeding perspective and from a maintaining a stroke characteristics and swimming well, then that was sort of obviously demonstrated. It was really good to see. So you've qualified for the race. How do you feel going into the event? Sort of 6.5 weeks to go. How do you feel compared to previously? And what would you say a successful day would look like?
Well, I guess successful for me would be completing the race first and foremost, getting over there without any injury or, you know, hopefully without any hypothermia or any sort of swimming related sickness. I would like to see my team at the end of the race. It's been a long time and they've been with me the whole time, and it'd be really cool to see them at the end after 3 attempts or 2.5 attempts. It's going to be really good. But leading into this race, my my last hope is to swim a really good time this week. Coming into the last 10K, I'll be able to do, because at the moment I reckon my wave after that difficult Christmas cracker swim is probably a bit behind what I was in my last time. And starting earlier would be great for me, getting 10 minutes less in the conditions. Um, that's what I'd like, but we'll see how it goes. And yeah, I guess successful to me, a good time would be great. Beating your time would be good. But uh, no, I reckon finishing the race and seeing not just my team, but everyone I swim with also finishing the race, whether they're doing a solo or a duo or a team, and seeing them all at the end after we've all finished the race would be awesome.
I think you're right. I think the team aspect is a really important part. Regarding times, I mean, there is such a variability in times based on the conditions. And I don't think we should even really compare. There's no need to compare to mine. I would expect that you are certainly a much stronger swimmer than I am. But depending on those conditions will certainly have an impact. And I would say to most swimmers, whatever you think your goal time is, potentially go plus or minus an hour, depending on what happens on the day. And I think you need to prepare for that, potentially being in the water for an initial hour if it's not a great day. So just coming up to the finish now, I found this really interesting and a great conversation. If someone's listening to this podcast and they're thinking about doing their first roto swim, or even a longer type event, but we'll sort of focus probably more on roto, what is one of the pieces of advice that you might want to share with them?
One of the first pieces of advice is that when you're doing your long swims in the pool, do it with someone else, because I've had a lot of experience swimming by myself in the pool and with other people, and it's always more enjoyable to share that swim with someone else. You know, you're going to be swimming 2-3 hours at least on your longer swims, and swimming with someone else, whether they swim the whole thing with you or parts of it, it'll be much more enjoyable for you. And you being out there every week doing the same thing, you have a much more enjoyable time, I reckon. Ocean swims are important, you know, preparing in the ocean. I think on the first time I did Rottnest, I tried to do as many 10K swims as possible for the event. I went down to Busselton and did one on Australia Day, and I did one in Sorrento, and I tried to do as many as possible before the event. And I think that was important because I saw my progression and my improvement. I think make sure you have the right people on your boat. I I had that on Lake Argyle. I certainly had the right people on the boat. And for Rottnest 2 years ago, I certainly had a great team as well. Different team, but really strong team. And they all helped out really well, especially when the conditions were tough and the paddlers were struggling, and they all helped out. So having a good team, yeah, making sure you get enough experience in the ocean rather than just in the pool, because I know that we did one long 18K swim before Rottnest in the pool, and that was good, but it really didn't prepare me for the conditions of that day. And even if it was just a little bit of chop, it would have been good to do a longer swim in the ocean before the day as well. Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with the right people and making sure you get that preparation done, especially in the ocean.
Excellent. So, Tyson, just finally, what does swimming give you beyond the events itself?
Well, I think swimming's a really big part of my life. When I'm not working, when I'm not at uni, I'm in the pool or training for a swim. Swimming's given me a lot of friends and a lot of people that are really, you know, role models in my life. I know that half of our swimming squad is engineers and half of them are physios, and surprisingly, that I chose both physio and engineering to do as uni parts. So, yeah, it's really been really important part, and it's a big part of my life. It's been a big part for my whole life, and I don't see that going away anytime soon, even after I finish the swim. And I'll still be coming swimming every week, 3 times a week, just because there's so many great people and it's an enjoyable time in my week.
Well, thank you very much for finding some time today to chat to me, Tyson. It's been really interesting to hear about your story. I'm really looking forward to watching you over the next 6 weeks as we start to just fine tune a few things leading into this event, and hopefully we can see you successfully cross to Whadjuk. And maybe we'll get you back on afterwards, and you can give us a bit of a recap on how the day went.
Yep, absolutely. That'd be awesome.
All right, wonderful. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.